Update on microcurrent, and I want to thank all of you for attending. And hopefully, we'll have some fun and we'll learn some additional things about microcurrent. I'm excited that we're having our seventh annual Microcurrent Case Conference this weekend. This is a great event. This is the seventh year that we've had this conference, and this is open to patients and the public. In the past, we restricted this conference only to physicians and licensed practitioners. But I think it's really important that those of you that have a microcurrent machine learn how to use all of the different parameters on the machine to get the maximum benefit. You've made an investment with the microcurrent machine, and it's just not for treating the eye. I was talking to an alternative doctor last month, and he said to me if his office was on fire and he had to save only one piece of equipment, it would be his microcurrent machine. He would forget about everything else. That's how much versatility. So it is remarkable what this machine can do, and you really don't understand the power until you begin to explore it for other issues, problems besides your eyes. So I got interested in microcurrent when I heard about the miraculous cure of microcurrent in the legendary golfer Sam Snead. And that was over 15 years ago. And I had the distinct pleasure of actually treating Sam Snead for a week, his home in Florida when he was alive. And he had a remarkable improvement of his vision. And Sam gave me golf lessons in return. But microcurrent has changed quite a bit since those days, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of what's going on with microcurrent. These are the basic mechanisms of microcurrent. It improves blood flow. There's no question about that, and I'll talk about some articles that illustrate that. It stimulates cellular activity, can remove scar tissue, reduces inflammation, and has a neuroprotective effect. And these things have they're all published studies on all of these items. There are not studies specifically with the eye, but you can assume that if it improves blood flow to a certain part of your body, that if you use it on your eye, it's going to improve blood flow. And certainly all of these things can be very valuable in improving someone's vision, reversing the pathology and improving vision. It's widely used by athletes. Lance Armstrong, his cycling team, used microcurrent routinely after every race, in addition to blood doping and other things that he did. But microcurrent was really big. I talked with Lance's doctor in one race. He had a hairline fracture of his ankle, and they healed it overnight with the microcurrent. And there's an athlete on the right. That's myself and my wife, Lee. We did the Marine Corps Marathon. Our bodies were aching and sore. I had no business running a marathon at age 62. I finished, and after a 30-minute treatment, it was phenomenal. All my muscle aches just disappeared. How can this happen? Well, microcurrent reduces inflammation. It blocks those inflammatory elements and helps the healing process. In the old days, over 15 years ago, we used the MicroStim 100. This machine only had 4 frequencies, and you had to apply it to specific acupuncture points. It was very tedious to use this. Patients got good results, but the compliance was not that great. Later on, I used the Precision Micro machine. This was a machine where you had to dial in the frequencies, and this was also very tedious. We got good results, but this was a very expensive machine, and patients couldn't afford taking this home. This machine was well over $10,000, plus you had to have an electrical engineering degree to use it. But we did have some patients who purchased this machine and used it. But for the longest period of time, I did the treatments in the office with the Precision Micro and then sent them home with the MicroStim 100. I'd like to talk about this idea of frequency-specific microcurrent. And this is one of the biggest advances in microcurrent. If you remember, the earlier machine I used only had 4 frequencies. And these were generic frequencies that worked, but they weren't really specific for the eye, inflammation, hemorrhage, and for things that we were specifically treating with ocular disorders. So each tissue has a unique frequency or a vibration. And what we want to do is we want to match that frequency or vibration with the microcurrent frequency. And there seems to be a supportive effect, a harmony, much like if you vibrate two tuning forks that have the same frequency. It matches that frequency and you have harmony. You have an increase in effect. So if you have two C sharp tuning forks and you vibrate them together, there's going to be an increase in energy. And that's what we're trying to do with frequency specific. The Inspir has been a dream of mine. I always felt that there could be the possibility of developing a programmable machine and an inexpensive machine. And when I discovered and developed my friendship with Ning Wu, he was the brilliant electrical engineer that put this thing together. And many of you have heard the story how I first consulted some electrical engineering firms and they felt that it wasn't possible. They wanted $30,000 to $40,000 up front. I was discouraged, but I didn't give up. I signed up for a master's degree in electrical engineering just to hang out with the geeks, and I discovered Ning Wu. I met Ning Wu, and he wanted to develop the machine, and we met many evenings working on the technology, and he put this thing together in 6 months. There have been some upgrades, so most of you have the latest version, which has a lot more power and versatility, and I'll talk about that a little later on. The big question is, why is the machine so expensive? I can buy microcurrent machines on eBay for $70 or $80. Now, most of the machines on eBay deal with milliamps, thousands of microamps. The machine that we use for the eye is a microcurrent machine, microamps. A microamp is a millionth of an amp. Studies have shown that higher levels of current actually reduce cellular function, block cellular function. That's one of the reasons why some of these TENS machines are used for pain. They block the nervous impulse. We want to stimulate healing and regeneration. Also, I found out from talking to the engineers that the microcurrent, when you develop a machine that uses a lower current, it's more costly. The technology is more sophisticated. And so that's another reason why there's a greater expense. As you know, we have different types of treatment. We have the body treatments, and I would encourage you not to underestimate these body treatments. I know many of you are only doing the eye program. You're not doing the stress or the detox. And this is two ways of doing the stress. One is on your abdomen, and the other is just holding the gloves in your hand, and you can do the detox using this. And the third way, as I mentioned, is sitting in a hot tub, putting the gloves and the leads in a hot tub and enjoying a microcurrent treatment that way. Now, there have been studies done on the eye, and these are just a few of them that have been published. Microcurrent, the treatment of macular degeneration, which I published in 2002. There was a study done, treatment of retinitis pigmentosa, reducing intraocular pressure and having a neuroprotective effect in glaucoma. I'm excited because I was asked to participate in a study at the University of Rome, and that study is still ongoing. But one thing I found out about the Italians, and I have no complaints, the Italians like to have meetings and they like to eat. So there hasn't been much progress on our research, but I have gained weight, and I am learning to speak a little bit more Italian. But the study is still ongoing, and the latest development is that I may be doing the electrical treatment on the animals here in the United States and sending the eyes to Italy. There is just some government problems in getting their laboratory approved for animal studies. And so this is the research project I'm doing, which is really a real thrill for me, especially since a major university is interested in microcurrent and eye disease. So I want to talk a little bit about microcurrent for dummies. There's something called Ohm's law, and this is simply voltage equals current times resistance. And why this is important is that the relationship between resistance and current. Um, I always make a big deal that you need to keep yourself hydrated because if you are dehydrated, the resistance is much higher, and you're going to need a lot more uh, voltage to establish the current. The microcurrent machine we have is current constant, and that is a beneficial effect and also a safety effect. The older machines we used were current adjustable machines. You could turn the knob and adjust the current high or low. We always told patients keep it low, but invariably they would turn the current up at a high level because they felt that high current gives you better results. More is better, but it's wrong. More does not give you better effect. The lower levels of current. But then how do you know when it is the optimal low level? Well, the machines that you are using, the Inspirastar machines, when I program the machine for 40 microamps, which is a low current, it stays at 40 no matter what happens. The only thing that really changes in your body is the resistance, depending on your hydration. So as the resistance goes up, increases, you need more voltage to get the same current. So we like to keep your resistance low, so the voltage needs to be low and you seem to get a better effect. So drink the water, drink lots of water. Frequency that we talk about is the number of cycles per second. And the frequency is kind of like a wave, and frequency is what characterizes the pitch. So we deal with different frequencies. Typically, the frequencies we deal with are anywhere between zero point 0.3 up to 970. And each frequency, we try to match the frequency with the tissue. One of the new developments that Ning is working on is to have a variable frequency generator built into your machine, which I think is brilliant. So, for example, the retina, we assume, is 95 hertz, 95 cycles a second. But maybe there's some individual variation. Maybe some people it's 96 or 94.8. We don't know. So what Ning has come up with is a way to generate a variable range. So when you run your program, it's not just staying on 95, it's fluctuating, kind of like a broad spectrum effect. So we're trying to hit the right frequency for you. So I am doing some research on this and treating some patients with this to see if it has an additional effect. So if any of you are interested, what we can do is we can set up two programs. So you can have your regular eye program and then maybe have a second one with to have this variable frequency. So these are things that we're going to be talking about at the microcurrent meeting this weekend. So as I mentioned, the three big mechanisms of action of microcurrent are increasing circulation, increased cellular activity, and reducing scar tissue. And this is a study, and there are many studies done. Uh, these are 24 patients have blockage of arteries in their lower leg, poor circulation, and 20 out of the 24 patients had a marked improvement after microcurrent. This is also a study that was done with Raynaud's disease. Raynaud's disease is peripheral vascular spasm, and was also looked at diabetic neuropathy, which is a decrease in circulation in diabetics. And the treatment did increase skin temperature and gave the patients relief from pain. This is chronic ulcers. These were 10 patients, and these patients were unresponsive to traditional medical approaches. And I like this study because this is a group that was unresponsive to medical, and after the microcurrent, 8 out of the 10 patients had successful healing. So this was a really good study. This is another one looking at healing of ulcers with microcurrent. And interestingly enough, microcurrent can help with heart disease, improving the hemodynamics and blood flow in coronary artery disease. In fact, there is a doctor in Utah, I can't think of his name, he's a cardiologist, and he's using microcurrent to help improve the blood flow in the people with heart disease. So this is kind of interesting. Used in fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is considered a non-inflammatory disease, and microcurrent increases the microcirculation in the muscles and helps to give a relief also through activation of endogenous neurotransmitters, these opioid-like chemicals that are released by the brain to help reduce pain. It's been used in hypertension with good results. We know that by relaxing the autonomic nervous system, the blood pressure will be lowered. And I'm a big advocate that the body will not heal if you're not in a relaxed state, if your autonomic nervous system is not in balance. So this is a study that shows that. Here's one, ringing of the ears or tinnitus. I am doing some investigation. My med school roommate is an ear, nose, and throat doctor in Greenwich, Connecticut, and we've been doing some work in terms of treating his patients with tinnitus. So there's been some variable results, and we do have some tinnitus programs that are available if you're interested in adding them to your machine. Now, this is the article, the landmark article, which showed that microcurrent improves cellular activity. And this was a great article, and this was published in the Clinical Orthopedics and Related Research Journal, which is a peer-reviewed journal looking at protein synthesis and cellular activity in rat skin. And he looked at various levels of current, and then he analyzed histopathologically the cells using the electron microscope. And he found that between 50 and 500 microamps will cause an increase in mitochondrial and increase the percent of ATP levels as high as 500%, 500. But the key here is this is low microamperage, between 50 and 500. We want to keep it low. So many of the TENS machines and machines on eBay go up beyond 500. And Dr. Cheng did note that when you got above 500, it actually caused a decrease in cellular activity. So you want to be careful using the microcurrent, that you want to use low levels of current. And that's why our machines are current constant. We set the machine at a certain level of current, and you cannot turn it up any higher. That is critical. And this is an article with therapy-resistant hypertension, which once again, these people were not responsive to conventional medications. And this conclusion was that the microcurrent may have an additional blood pressure lowering properties. So once again, another article about hypertension. This is an interesting article that one of the problems with horses is that there is not a very good regeneration when they get a fracture of their bone. You may have heard of stories where racehorses have fractured their leg or something like that, and they had to be put to sleep because their bones are just so small and narrow and lightweight. Well, this article showed that microcurrent can have a positive application on stimulating these cellular elements in horses, the equine tenocytes. But it states here, depends on the current intensity. So once again, the higher current seems to cause a decrease in cellular proliferation. You want the lower levels of current. This is another article with chronic resistant wounds. And if you think about it, when you have macular degeneration, it's like a wound in your eye. And, we want to get it to heal. So if it works on the skin, I think it can work on the eye. And the other interesting thing is embryologically, the eye comes from the ectoderm or the skin. So there is a relationship between the skin and the eye. And we see this with pigmentation, warts. So there's a lot of features that take place on the skin which are mirrored in the eye. This is a study looking at the management of radiation-induced fibrosis. Fibrosis is scarring. So this clearly showed that microcurrent, 82% of the patients had an improvement of movement after fibrosis or scarring in head and neck patients that had cancer. So this study illustrates that microcurrent can help with scar tissue. Now, the body is like it's an electrical system. Every cell in the body is like a battery. They have a positive and negative pole. And the cells communicate with electricity. And electricity are needed. This electrical stimulation is needed for repair and regeneration. So looking at the acupuncture-based model, that there's electrical currents that flow in the body. So there's actually two applications. One can be treating the acupuncture meridians or treating the tissue directly. And I've elected, well, initially I started by treating acupuncture meridians, and I still occasionally use the acupuncture meridians, but I have found that it's much easier and the results are much better when you treat directly on the tissue. Okay, frequency specific goes back to Abrams, many different frequencies. This is an interesting article, because people always say, is there any evidence that the pulse frequencies are better for certain application? This was a study looking at the pulse pattern of chronic pain patients. And it showed that patients prefer specific pulse frequency and pulse patterns unique to the individual. So in other words, this whole concept that maybe we need some specific frequencies for each one of us. And that's one of the reasons why you go through the 3-day Kondrot program. We're experimenting with different frequencies, but maybe we could find a better one. That seems to always be a goal. Much like in homeopathy, we get a good remedy for you, but maybe there's a remedy with a little bit better vibration that might work better. So one of the things that Ning and I were working on is having this variable frequency generator. And it's also really slick that we can actually record the frequency that you seem to get a better effect. And I'll talk about that at the end. So this is a really interesting study. Arachidonic acid is a strong acid which induces swelling, and they did this in a rabbit ear. And then what they did is they had one set of frequencies that were specific for inflammation and skin, and that's 40, 116, which is in the red area here. So this is before. This is using the specific frequency, and this is using a placebo, which microcurrent was applied, but it wasn't that specific frequency. So you can see that when you have a frequency specific microcurrent, there's a much greater response. And this study was published showing that specific frequencies do help the eye. So the Inspirastar is the first programmable portable microcurrent machine. And we do have 10 programs. So many of you that are listening only have 5 programs on your machine or 6. You can add additional programs. And if you call the office, they can send you a list of available programs and we can program your machine for you. The additional programs are $100 a program. But if you take the InspirStar course, you're going to have these unlimited programs, and you're going to be able to program your own machine and change the programs, which has a big advantage. So this is the machine here, and this is on the right, it shows you how you can connect to a simple computer and change your frequencies and the program on your machine. Now, many of the iPrograms are proprietary, so you can't go into your iProgram and change them, but you can change the current and time on your machine. If you wanted to try a shorter program, or maybe you wanted to try a lower current or a little bit higher, you can do that, but you really can't change the inner program. The other thing that's kind of exciting is, as I mentioned, these variable frequencies and a computer screen control and recording. So this is what it looks like right here. So this is channel 1 on the left, and the center channel 2 in the output. So as you're doing a microcurrent treatment, you can actually read on your machine what current is going through. And then you can change the frequency or the current to see if you have an additional effect. This is particularly valuable for people with musculoskeletal problems, pain, because sometimes by changing the frequency slightly, we can change the vision. I'm beginning to look at this for eye programs. And of course, it's kind of difficult because sometimes there's a lag. But I am looking at developing a system where we can hook up the microcurrent to you, and you can be looking at the eye chart and give me some feedback. I think my vision's better. So that would be kind of amazing to vary the frequencies as you're looking at the eye chart. We also have something here in the office called the visual evoked potential, which measures brain waves. So there may be a really interesting way of hooking up the microcurrent and measuring the brain waves, the actual light and energetic transmission to your brain from your eye. And then we can fine tune the microcurrent. So there's just a lot of exciting things that are going on with microcurrent. And I would encourage you to attend the Microcurrent Case Conference, which is this weekend. But I know that for many of you, you can't come. It's a short notice, but these are our 2014 dates, March 22nd and 23rd, and October 2nd and 3rd. So that's all I have. And if any of you have questions, you can either raise your hand so I can talk to you. There's a little hand button on your control panel, or you can just write a question and I can answer that. So once again, those of you that might be interested in updating your machine for additional programs, give the office a call, talk to Nicole or Rachel, and you could send your machine and we could put additional programs in. I'm going to send everyone a copy of all the slides, and I'll also send a sheet on all the available programs that we have for your machine. But the ideal situation is to get trained and to be able to make changes with your microcurrent machine, to change your programs, to change these parameters. And it is possible. All you need is a PC computer, Windows-based operating system, and a USB port. And the purpose of the training is for you to learn the software and to be able to make those changes. So any questions? Okay. All right. Somebody has their hand up. Nancy, do you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. It's amazing technology.
I want to know how you know if you should be doing the microcurrent on your eyes every day or every other day?
Well, that's a good question. I usually like to start people maybe for 3 to 6 months every day. And then after that, we can reduce it to every other day. But it depends. You know, some people, we haven't really identified the underlying problem. Let's say you have heavy metal toxicity, you have poor circulation, and you're still losing vision. If that's the case, sometimes we have you use the microcurrent twice a day. You know, some patients that have glaucoma, that they're not poorly controlled, the pressures are up. I have them use the microcurrent every day. So there's really no firm answer to that. But the general rule is we like you to use it every day for 3 to 6 months, and after that, every other day.
My microcurrent is at 54 minutes, so last time I was in February, you said every other day.
Yeah, we may want to reduce the time because one thing I'm observing is you don't really need those long treatment programs. Um, we're reducing the treatment programs now to 30 minutes. It's a little bit more tolerable to patients. There's been some studies that have indicated that within the first couple of minutes, you'll get a response. But now remember this, you have a 54-minute program. It's not all the same frequency. Typically, every 30 seconds to a minute, we change a frequency pair.
Is that true? My machine is 6.5 years old.
Yeah, you probably have 54 frequency pairs in your machine. Remember, I
And so
mentioned that we're trying to hit the right frequency for your eye, and
right.
we're varying the frequencies. But now with this new program that Ning has developed, and I'm just beginning to experiment with it, it's a variable frequency generator. So when we run a program, let's say 40 is inflammation and 95 is your retina. That's the frequency pair. But maybe for you, it's 38.5 and 94.5. Maybe that's the perfect frequency for you. So what we're doing is we're doing a narrow band. So instead of 40, we're going to be running maybe 38 to 42, a variable generator, and it'll cross it with the other number. This is something Ning has developed, and we're trying to see if it gets better results. So right now I have limited experience. Theoretically, it should give better results, but you know, we have to wait, for the application out in the field. So
Would I need
if you're interested in trying that frequency variability, let me know, and then we could program your machine. So, in other words, you could have, one eye program will be number one, and the other one will be the frequency variation will be number two, and you could try both of them and see if it's helping you anymore.
Okay. I would need I would need the newer machine to do that.
Yeah,
Is
because
that
the newer machine has that ability. The older machines we could only do 5 programs. The newer machine we can put up to 10 programs, and it has the capability. It just has a larger hard drive to do some of these more creative things.
okay?
And
Thank you.
we will give, all existing patients, we give you a discount on the new machine, and we also have a trade-in for your old machine. But some
Sounds
people
good.
like to keep their old machine because they can do 2 programs at once. The old machine's doing the stress program, and then they're doing their eye. You can do 2 programs at once. So you could talk
Right.
to the girls in the office in terms of, how old your machine is. It's 6 years old. And so we will give you some trade-in value for the new machine. We'll give you a discount on the new machine plus a trade-in value. So that'll help soften the blow.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks for the question. Anybody else have any questions? You can either raise your hand, just like being in school. Nancy raised her hand. Okay, I'm going to mute you, Nancy, and we have another question. Hello, Cheryl, can you hear me? Hello? Cheryl, you're unmuted. You should be able to hear me. and I should be able to hear you, but I can't hear you. So maybe your microphone on your computer isn't set up properly. So since I can't hear you, if you wanted to type your question, if you don't mind. Okay, anybody else? I think Cheryl is going to be okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, you can always email me if you have a question. And once again, every Monday, um, we, not every Monday, the first Monday of the month, we have these coaching webinars. And next month, I want to talk about all the exciting things that have happened to me visiting and presenting in Europe. And in particular, I want to talk about the International Light Association meeting that I attended. I met some brilliant medical doctors who are using light, in particular, a French doctor who really has blown my mind using narrowband wavelengths of light. And he's getting amazing results in treating eye problems. In fact, I was so impressed that I have signed up to take his course. His course is a 2-year course. Um, and we meet every couple times a year. And he is in Paris, France. I don't speak a word of French, but my wife is fluent in French, so she'll be able to translate for me. And he wants to collaborate with me on developing a project using narrow width light in the treatment of macular degeneration, narrow wavelength light. So I'll be explaining more about his technique, how it's different than mine, and his results. So that was really exciting. So, and I'll be keeping you posted on that. So I want to thank everybody for attending. And if you do have any additional questions, please email me and I'll send you a recording and also a copy of the slides. So wishing everyone good health and clear vision. And until next month, hope stay well.